Welcome to the conversation. I'm Paul Grondahl, director of the New York State Writers Institute at the University of Albany. Very excited about our guest today, a professor at the university, Dr. Kyra Gaunt, a noted ethnomusicologist. And before we start our conversation, welcome, Kyra.
Thank you.
I would remind viewers that this interview will be archived on the New York State Writers Institute YouTube channel. You can also check it out on our website, nyswritersinstitute.org, our Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter page. Now, Professor Gaunt is the author also of the book, The Games Black Girls Play, Learning the Ropes from Doubledutch to Hip Hop.
Yes.
And your article that came out in the New York Times was an editor's pick. It's getting a lot of attention online, and it's about this topic, about Doubledutch, about, you call them game songs that Black girls play, and that you talked about growing up outside Washington that you also played as a girl. Can you talk about, you've had a long interest in Doubledutch and jump roping, right?
Yeah, I went to the University of Michigan where I did my doctorate. I was in the School of Music there. I'm a classically trained musician, but I became an ethnomusicologist, and I was interested actually in early days in hip hop. I still teach about hip hop, but I was interested in women in hip hop. And in a chance encounter, I stumbled upon two twin 7-year-old Black girls playing a hand clapping game song, and I had this thought that the music making, they were playing a game called Slide, or sometimes called numbers. It's like 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So it has an algorithmic formation where you take a particular pattern and then you additively add to it. And the game is it's a mental fitness game. It's to get to 10 and to move faster progressively.
Right.
And so I heard them playing this, and then I heard them playing some other game songs, and I was like, oh my God, this is kind of like some of the game songs they were playing, from Mary Mac to others. They were remixing, and I thought about the beat making and the sampling of ideas, and I thought this is a early formation of Black popular music making.
Right.
And I interviewed about 18 women for my dissertation, which eventually led to my book. Women 18 to 56, mostly Black American, American descent, slavery, past, people who are descendants of slaves from the U.S., as opposed to like Caribbean folks, because they have a different orientation to the metrical pulse in music generally. And I just wanted to keep my sample focused on one group, and thought maybe later I'll study Caribbean folk or African folk. And all of the women that I interviewed, including my mother, I asked them how they learned to be musically Black, like just to tell me the story of their lives or how to be musical. And they brought up hand boning, which is, for anybody familiar with music from the 50s and 60s, is Bo Diddley beat.
Right.
And they brought up lots of popular songs that it wasn't until much later, when you're a novice in any field, even in a PhD, sometimes you forget to listen to the things that the people that you interview tell you about. And I think I was writing my book, and I started listening to these songs that were mentioned in the interviews, and I realized many of them had references to girls or women around the music making that they did. So the example is a 50-year period that I traced from references from those interviews. 1958, Little Anthony and the Imperials, Shimmy Shimmy Cocoa Pop.
I don't know, okay.
So shimmy shimmy cocoa pop, shimmy shimmy bop. It's a novelty song which has some like references to Africa and natives in it. To this day, Little Anthony and the Imperials will not perform the song. It has some African stereotypes written in it. Well, that informs a game song that's still played today called Down, down, baby. Down, baby. Down, down, roller coaster. Sweet, sweet baby. I'll never let you go. Shimmy, shimmy, cocoa pop. Shimmy, shimmy, pie. Shimmy, shimmy, cocoa pop. Shimmy, shimmy, pie. Grandma, sick in bed. So that song in 2000, just after I finished my dissertation and before I published my book, drove the chorus for Nelly's Country Grammar. He was a new artist out of St. Louis.
Right.
And what I argued was that girls were tastemakers. They were hidden music makers,
right,
in the music business.
And influencers.
Influencers, right. We would call them influencers today. I've never even thought of that.
and I love your line in your essay. You got no royalties for the Doubledutch girls, which was, so these hip hop stars were kind of ripping them off.
Well, I mean, the public domain is, I want to say that hip hop artists were driven to doing that because the cultural strategy behind sampling, which is orality, which is common throughout the African and African American cultural expressive tradition, wasn't allowed in a system of copyright. Right. And so it became kind of natural to take advantage of, for two reasons I assert, to take advantage of girls' musical play. One is you don't have to pay any royalty fees, right? You can just make sure it's part of the public domain. And the other is, how do you get women and girls onto the dance floor in a style that's hyper-masculine? Mm-hmm. So it's very important because even in early hip-hop, it was clear to me in studying hip-hop back in my dissertation days that there would never be a party, because the Black community is quite homophobic, if there aren't women present. And so, I mean, even before recordings, that's called, I call it a set, where guys sit around and listen to music. Mm-hmm. That is not a party.
No.
And hip hop was party culture, indoor and outdoor, clubs and street parties. And so guys aren't dancing with each other. Right. And as we know now, early hip hop, DJ Kool Herc's sister, Cynthia Herc, a lot of women played a big role in making sure the spaces that people occupied came together. Right. So that's why the name of the book was The Games Black Girls Play, Learning the Ropes from Doubledutch to Hip Hop.
Right. So in this essay, and I just want a couple excerpts from it. You write, more sophisticated than patty cake, there are 3 reasons Black girls' game songs seem insignificant. They are performed by children, they center girls' experience over boys, and their music making is part of the public domain, where individual authorship or ownership cannot be assigned. No royalties for the songmakers of
Right, no royalties.
How do they learn these then? Do they just pass them among friends? Do they see it on social media?
Well, I think that once we have the rise of the teenager and what was the first social media in that respect, pop songs, on radio and television. Right. It's hard to bifurcate, have some binary thinking about there's popular music and there's vernacular culture. But, if you think about the evolution from the cradle to the grave, your first experience is not purchasing music. Your first experience is in a local environment where music making, from starting with things like lullabies and patty cake, become a part of your everyday life. Right. And of course, if you live in a community or in a household where there's a radio and a television, you're also influenced by Big Mac filet of cheese, quarter pound of French fries, like game songs that come from the influence of jingles in the public sphere. Right. And so, but it's girls who tend to be carriers from generation to generation at same age group, peer group play. Right. A lot of people that I've been hearing from after the publication have been non-Black women. In particular, I haven't heard from many men because I know they play them, but they won't admit it.
Yeah, of course. I watched it, but I wasn't coordinated enough. That's why I want to get to the next point too, the athleticism involved, both for the, you call them the twirlers and the jumper. I mean, in addition to keeping that rhythm and these very intricate word plays, I mean, it seems like it should be part of the curriculum in a way, but it was always outside school, right? Maybe on the playground, but really more in the street or something. Or
Well, I mean, it is the fact that you know, to continue my thought before, the fact that girls um, maintain the culture,
right,
um, and they brought it to school with them, which I talk about in the article. A lot of non-Black girls learn those game songs too, especially in places like New York City or Chicago or LA,
right,
where the school systems by the 70s were pretty, if not already integrated, beginning to be integrated. Smaller cities like Charlottesville were starting to integrate in the 70s, but still, anywhere Black girls went, they brought their game songs with them.
right,
And so the skill of whether it's a hand clapping game song or a cheer, what I write about, these are cheers that are not sideline sports for a sideline to boys sports, but they're the remnants or the carryover from ring games from that date back before emancipation.
mm-hmm.
Ring Around the Rosie is
Oh, yeah.
is a example of a ring game, but the African American game songs are quite adventurous. They involve a lot of polyrhythms, a lot of call and response, a lot of individuality within collectivity. So you're supposed to get in the ring and, you know, shake it to the east, shake it to the west, shake it to the very one that you love the best, or jig hello, jig hello. Hey Kyra, hey what? Introduce yourself. Know what? Introduce yourself. Know what? My name is Kyra. Yeah, I got the simple. Yeah, I do the motion. Yeah. So there's all of this call and response, and so
Right,
you're learning about the hidden musicianship that is very much a part of Black popular, you know,
right,
commercial culture.
right,
It's just that even women, when they moved into the music industry, tend to forget it. We're all socialized into kind of a patriarchal orientation to commercial spaces that are dominated by men. 98% of the people who produce the most popular songs in rap, hip hop, and pop that you hear are men, not women. It's only 2%.
of course. But what age does it stop or whatever? Because you know we're on the University at Albany campus, very diverse. I see large groups of Black women who I assume are 18, 19, 20, 21, kind of hanging out and talking, but I listen and kind of observe when I walk through, but I never hear this. Do they, is this something
Yeah.
that doesn't come to campus, or do they grow out of it? It's not cool, or
Well, you know, boys get to play their games throughout life. They get to play baseball, basketball, football, hockey, rugby. Girls, unfortunately, girls suffer the consequences of not only often being the caretaker of their younger siblings, but also teenage, you know, pregnancy or sexual assault, or there are various things that pull girls and young women out of the public sphere
hmm,
and silence them. So some of the things that I am starting to observe more and more is that I think the retreat into just dance has a lot to do with those kinds of um, unspoken kind of harms that happen that are extremely pervasive in
hmm,
the Black community and in Black, Brown, and Native American communities.
right,
High rates of intimate partner violence and dating violence before the age of 16. I think the
okay,
CDC reported back in 2011 that for African American girls before the age of 16, it's triple the national average intimate partner violence.
hmm, yeah,
So I think there are a number of societal factors and structures. There's a wonderful book by Monique Morris about school push out. So there's a lot of pressure to be respectable and perform well and fit in and not be too this or not be too that, not be too loud, not too. So there's a lot of hemming in during when adolescence emerges for Black girls.
right,
And so I think it leads to a lot of acting out, but it doesn't, there's not a lot of room for seeing Black girls musical play
right,
is as vital as the football game,
hmm,
you know? There's not money behind it. There's not space for it.
Yeah. I also saw your TED Talk, which is several million views
I know it has more. Okay, so I had this insight this morning. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's "The Danger of a Single Story" is one of my favorite TED Talks.
Mm.
My video has more views than she does.
Nice. Because it's beautifully produced, but it talks about it's such a simple thing, and it goes back centuries, and it can be made of many things. So, when you were growing up, for instance, did you just make your own jump ropes? I see now kind of commercial ones that some people use, mass produced, but I guess kids are still making their own.
Well, I mean, I don't know what kids today are doing. And I want to give props to the TED staff and the director, Mac Primo. I can't remember his last, Mac Primo. It was a collaborative effort on that video. Like, I helped define the script. There was a series of people that helped. As a professor, I really think it's really important for our young emerging adults to realize how collaborative any production is. All right, you have people that work with you to create things,
right.
And people might see you as the front-facing image of the writing institute, but there's a whole number of people involved. And so that video, it's only 3 minutes, but even the visuals and the way that things are cut, he was able to really capture the script that we created. And what was the question?
Well, I forget where my question was going. Basically, the simplicity and the durability of the jump rope that has lasted through centuries, and doesn't have to be high tech like so many things now.
Sun is spinning. There we go.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, there was no need to buy a rope. Plus, the ropes that they sold were too thick and don't have enough. They don't whip the way you want them to. They're too cloth-like. So a telephone cord was perfect, right? If anybody in your community had a working class job or had a phone, and not everybody in the South had phones, old telephone cords would be perfect, right? Or if you had a clothesline. When I was growing up, there was a clothesline in my backyard.
Yep.
Once we stopped using it because we started having our own, dryers, then there was the cord, and you could clip it down, and it was a perfect jump rope.
Right.
But I don't know where they probably buy them today, but to get a perfect jump rope that has that whipping sound, if you can find the cords, the cords for the iPhones aren't long enough.
No, they're too square. These have to be round, and I think a lot of them had metal in them or something strong.
No, I mean the telephone cords did, but I mean the ones that you can buy around the Doubledutch competition are plastic, and
really?
have little loops at the end, so you can wrap them around your wrists.
Right.
And they usually come you get a pink and a yellow one. Right. And they're designed now for adults because the ones that were made for kids in the competition don't work well for adults, height-wise. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you probably could find them online. And now, Doubledutch has returned among women who are returning to the ropes.
Huh.
I think it was 2015, a reporter from Philadelphia called me. They did a story, and 2,000 women showed up in a park to return to the ropes.
Wow.
And the next weekend, they did it 2 weeks later, it was 5,000 women. So, I mean, these little Doubledutch crews are popping up everywhere. Chicago, Atlanta, DC. The picture at the top of the New York Times is from the Black Lives Matter mural in DC.
That's a great picture. Gives us an idea, though. We might have to bring it to campus or something, a collaboration with the music department and the Writers Institute or something.
Well, there's lots of our students who know how to double dutch and know lots of game songs. In my Black American music class, we spent a whole day learning a song called, what was it? In a hot. I stole my mommy's pocketbook, so what? And the guys were like, this is hard. It's mentally demanding. It requires, you know, the mental capacity to maintain the vocables and the lyrics and the song. And to not overthink. It's a really great frame for not overthinking.
Right.
You just got to immerse yourself and go with the flow.
So on campus, I've noticed it was very popular a few years ago, but I still think it's pretty popular, like step groups.
Oh, yeah.
Is that an option? It seems somewhat related.
Yeah, it is very much related.
Yeah.
The step show tradition comes out of the Black sorority and fraternity and sorority system. For local people who know the history of Henry Johnson, those early ROTC outfits ended up starting, particularly Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, began taking the military cadences and mixing it with the memory or history of gumboot dancing from South Africa. And so those traditions still from somewhere around 1918 to now.
Right.
They are huge. You can find lots of YouTube videos within the sorority organization and across between the sororities, within the fraternities, and across between the sister and brother sororities. They bring their little kids and they do step shows. So it's a huge, huge network, and it's definitely spread beyond the United States because of YouTube.
Right. So you talk a little bit too in the New York Times essay. The pandemic has kind of shut it down for a while, but it's still finding a way to, you know, go on the ropes. And
yeah, I mean, thankfully, much of the data that we're getting, the science we're getting about the transmission of the virus says that being outdoors is safer. Right. So that image at the top of the page of the Magic of Black Girls article, you can see that the girl in the middle of the ropes doesn't have a mask on, but they're outside. When I was writing the piece about a month or so ago, we were still a little dicey. We don't have the news. And I think although I live outside, I live right on Washington Park in downtown Albany. And I see kids in the park all the time. I don't see a lot of Black kids. And so given that we're more susceptible, given kind of the socioeconomic factors that contribute to us being more vulnerable to the virus, I think that some people may stay away from playgrounds. But we were already too much on the mobile screen. TikTok is the thing, not going to playgrounds.
Yeah.
I would be the first person to advocate for getting yourself some of the greenery in your system. It's good for your immune system to be in green spaces.
Plus, I have to TikTok. And I also have to think Doubledutch is aerobic exercise, because I've watched it many times on the playgrounds. A couple of times kids kind of joke like, come on, give it a try. Like I could not get one jump. No, I mean, it's just like the rope just hit me, and you know,
that's where everybody starts. We all start with like trying to get in, like
exactly. When was the last time you Doubledutched?
It's been a few years. Whenever I have the opportunity to travel to speak about my work,
right.
I often am invited by community centers in Black communities. It's been since before I came to UAlbany, so it's been at least 3 years.
Right.
I was invited to some place in Green Bay, and they brought a troupe of jump ropers from Chicago.
Oh, wow.
What's the name of that place? The wonderful college, Catholic college. And they went to a community center, and I hadn't jumped for ages. And I I didn't learn how to jump when I was a kid. I had somebody email me today like, I'm not like you. I wasn't very good at it when I was like, well, I'm like, if you had read the end of my book, this person has used my book, you would know that I learned as an adult. I played, but I wasn't good. I was very shy.
Right.
I'm an only child. And so getting over the, like, it's not quite hazing by the rope.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
But if you are an only child and you don't have the thick skin you need to just kind of muddle through
Right.
the kind of things that your sisters and brothers do, well, then getting in the ropes doesn't seem so bad.
Right.
Right.
What, in your estimation, which is more difficult or challenging, the jumper or the you call them twirlers or spinners or?
So there's the turners.
The turners, okay.
And the jumpers.
Yeah.
Not everybody can turn. It's a real specialized art. So usually there's, it's kind of like an 80-20 rule. 20% of girls can really turn well and not do what we call double-handed, where the rope goes ta-ta, ta-ta, ta-ta.
That looks hard. That looks like a drummer, like keeping two
exactly
on, and
And what's challenging for the turner is you've got to maintain that timeline.
Right.
But you've got to make sure that the ropes go over. So you're trying to make sure that the ropes don't get in the way of not only a single jumper, but a duo or a triple set of jumpers.
Right.
So you've got to make the elliptical space big enough so that people don't catch the ropes. And then the jumper has to focus on maintaining their pedaling while they're also doing tricks.
Yeah.
So pop-ups or doing a 360 or jumping or freestyling. Yeah. So it really is an elliptical stage of activity. It's kind of like Black people's Cirque du Soleil.
That's a good analogy. But you're also, the turner is only as good as the person at the other end, because if they're out of sync, you're out of sync.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, it's almost like second nature. Turners never even notice each other.
Yeah. Oh, really?
I mean, unless the other person is double-handed, they don't have to worry about anything. The timeline maintains. It's kind of, it's a really great analogy for helping people think about that politics are structured by things that you don't think about, right? There's something that keeps government going or higher education going. Now, if you focus on that, you can't serve the populations or do the things you need. Right. So you can't be focused on the timeline. The timeline has to be a given. Mm-hmm. So turning is kind of the basics. And so they'll give you a chance to learn, but you can't do it for long.
Yeah.
I mean, girls will go off and practice with their girlfriends without jumpers, or with friends and be like, I need to master this. But there's something about all games, not just physical games, but online games, is they provide a structure for you to just find a practice and a role to play without thinking. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. And the more you think, the more you take yourself out of the role.
Right. So I also wanted to talk about, I know you're on sabbatical now. You're working on a whole new book, I assume, but your research, can you talk about that? It has to do with, again, young women, girls, and online content and violence. And can you explain a little bit about what you're researching now?
Absolutely. I'm going to pull up some notes to remind me of some of the things that I've been publishing the last few years, so that you get a sense of what I'm about to talk about. It's let me just pull this up real quick. Once I was telling somebody, I have a writing group that I've had for 11 weeks during the quarantine, and we write stuff and then we forget about it, right? Right. It's like something gets published and you just forget. We were talking about maybe creating artworks, pieces of collages to help us remember what we did. Mm-hmm. And so in 2015, before I got to UAlbany, I published an article called YouTube, Twerking, and You. I've been always a TV boob tube baby. I love television. I'm a fiend for it. Mm-hmm. So when YouTube emerged, I was very interested in finding out how I might figure out something to do in my research around it. And so 2013 was a pivotal year on YouTube and the music industry. YouTube signed a deal with Billboard and Nielsen ratings so that music on the platform counts, or music streams, proportion, what is it? It's something, I can't remember the breakdown, but a certain number of streams count towards a single sale on the Billboard chart.
Right.
Or on the Recording Industry Association of America.
Yep.
So that means the gold and platinum records since 2013 include music streaming. At the same time, twerking was the #1 viral type of video on YouTube. Millions and millions of people uploaded videos, mostly girls and women. And I was interested in that because I had shifted from vernacular play, game songs, to trying to figure out what Black girls were doing online. And so when I went looking on YouTube, I stumbled, I should say, you know, some people might think I stumble upon my work is not serious, but I'm an ethnographer. I teach cultural anthropology and sociology of music. And often what we do is immerse ourselves in settings to discover what the setting has to tell us, what people have to tell us about what's important. And so I stumbled upon a video by Nicki Minaj on International Women's Day in 2013, March 8th. And back then in 2013, they had not had an artist reach 1 million views in 24 hours. Now it's like,
yeah,
it's not even an issue.
Right.
You could do that in an hour, probably. Right. But I noticed this video, Freaks by French Montana, featuring Nicki Minaj. And it occurred to me that the video had full frontal nudity. Nicki Minaj has some pasties on and a jacket. Mm-hmm. But as far as I was concerned, if I had kids, I would have been very alarmed that this was so publicly available on a general audience platform like YouTube. And long story short is I discovered that you can't file a complaint about that with the FCC because the FCC doesn't monitor YouTube and other social media platforms. Yeah. So back in the day, it was like, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? That little campaign.
Watching YouTube.
Yeah. Now, you know, now not only are they on YouTube, but they're being watched by people and they can engage with people. You couldn't do that on television.
Yeah.
So an 8 or a 5-year-old, oh, it's getting hot in here. Let me turn on my, hold on.
Yep.
My apartment faces the sun at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And
a lot of rain here. I hope it
yeah. So I began to notice this, what I consider kind of a slow violence against girls online. Anybody who has a daughter today knows that it's a very precarious situation to be online for girls and women. They will inevitably face some kind of slut-shaming, harassment, and particularly for young girls on YouTube, grooming. So I began to I collected with my students in a collaborative project about 1,000 videos of twerking, because that's what Nicki Minaj was doing in that particular video that I stumbled upon.
Right.
So I thought, well, girls must like what Nicki Minaj is doing, and let me see what user-generated content they're creating. And lo and behold, there were millions of videos of young girls just playing in their bedrooms if they were under 13 and over 13, trying to get attention, maybe trying to monetize their site, even if they didn't really have the tools to monetize their site, thinking that if they could just get enough traffic, they would become famous. So it reminded me of when I grew up in the 70s, mm-hmm. in the late 60s, early 70s, and I just knew someone was going to discover me as the new Diana Ross in my bedroom.
Of course. Of course.
The imagination of adolescence, you know, is something to behold. Right. Right. You know, and in your bedroom, you do all kinds of things to try and find yourself. you put pictures. Mine were Right On Magazine with Michael Jackson and Philip Michael Thomas from Miami Vice on my wall. And making mixtapes on my boombox from the radio station in Washington, D.C., WKYS. And so I was primed from that experience to think about what girls might be doing, as opposed to what the audiences were seeing, the unintended audiences were seeing when they watched girls twerking. In case you don't know what twerking is.
I know Miley Cyrus made it big, you know.
Well, yeah,
monetized it. Yeah, but
we black women and girls resent that, but she's the one who capitalized.
Yeah, she did.
And appropriated in 2013.
Right.
But it actually is to give you a quick definition, it's popping, locking, dropping, and bouncing your booty like a basketball to the beats and rhymes of a rap song. And its history comes out of New Orleans from a tradition called bounce music, and bounce is a dance. And twerking is just one aspect of a set of gestures that are included in bounce music and bounce dance.
Right.
And so what audiences were doing underneath the videos of even an 8-year-old girl was asking her to take off more of her clothes in the next video, or I won't share here, but really vulgar, treating them like they're prostitutes or sex objects, talking to them, talking about them, going and finding what we call doxing their personal information and putting it below their below their video. So going to find their Instagram or their Twitter or their Tumblr account or their Kik name and putting it below, or worse yet, men would leave their numbers, real numbers, phone numbers, underneath their videos. So my next book is about, it's called Played, Twerking at the Intersection of Music, Technology, and Violence Against Girls on YouTube.
So these are sexual predators who are finding their next victims online. So are you going into like criminal cases and assaults?
No, I do cite the former Attorney General Eric Holder, who said that the only thing that's getting worse is how young the age of the girls that are being targeted are.
Right.
That is declining, is the age at which this is happening.
Right.
And what I'm doing instead is I'm observing and tracking all of this content, which as of last year, when the fines against YouTube and TikTok took place, YouTube now automatically makes a video that has a child's face in it. The comments are disabled. So I have some of the only data, perhaps, that anybody's collected around marginalized girls that shows the comments that used to be made, because you can't see them now. The video stays online, but the comments are disabled.
Yeah, I mean, the volume is so immense. Do you think it's possible to police it? I mean, Facebook now is trying to verify, and they keep saying the thousands of horrible hate sites they've removed. But I mean, in that case, if it's a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old girl, shouldn't a guardian or somebody also, be protecting them in a way? Can you expect again, I agree that these companies should be held to account, but, is it possible?
It's impossible for parents. It's impossible for parents who were sold on the idea that they should get their kids their own phone.
Yeah.
While they're at work.
Right.
And in some cases, this is not, like when I say single parents, the majority of single parents are not Black, they're white.
Right.
Right? So any single parent, white, particularly mothers who are, working full time and managing having one or more children, cannot be responsible, and neither can girls under the age of 18, and I would definitely assert under the age of 13, be held accountable for protecting themselves from a predator.
No, I agree.
They do not have the capacity to know what that is when they're being lured by you could be a star. And it doesn't matter if they're girls or boys. I have in my data set a boy who was 7 years old, white boy who thought he was going to be the next Eminem, rapping very sexist lyrics by himself in his bedroom. Tons of videos, him beatboxing. I flagged that content for over a year and never got a response. I was able to help one of the girls in the data set. I worked with a journalist, an investigative journalist who now works for the New York Times, Kashmir Hill. We tried to search through my data set for a quote unquote victim. And we stumbled only upon this one now 11-year-old who had uploaded a video when she was 9 of herself twerking in a Miley Cyrus t-shirt with her 2 cousins in the bedroom. When any adult would pass by the door, it was a console desktop platform. When they would pass by the door, she and her cousins would, act like they weren't doing anything. And they were just dancing normally, what is culturally age appropriate, but she had lost control of her account. Perhaps she just forgot the password so she was underneath her video trying to, quote, defend herself to the pervs. And it took us 4 months, myself, an ACLU technologist, an attorney from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and Kashmir and I, 4 months to get that one video down off the platform in 2015 or 2016. And the attorney for Google did not want to know about. They are practicing plausible deniability. They know exactly, if I was to assert, they know exactly what's going on. It's point-to-point user information. You know exactly who, where, when, how, why. And before last year, they swore that they didn't know that there were kids on the platform. And all of a sudden, with a snap of the finger, they can use the technology to turn off the comments without knowing, just from face recognition.
Is the solution to hurt them economically? There's a whole bunch of companies that are now pulling their ads from Facebook for this type of thing, that they are not policing their site. If both users and advertisers boycott, that might send a message and get some action. Is that effective? Or?
The problem is there's not a lot of people who care about Black girls. The example I would offer is that for almost 20 years or more, R. Kelly has been a predator against Black girls, underage Black girls, with a noted investigative journalist on the case for 20 years. And he still hasn't been prosecuted. He's in jail. So, there isn't a more vulnerable girl that's dominant on social media platforms, driving content. Jalea Harmon on TikTok and her renegade dance. But they're still invisible as victims because Black girls are not seen as children. They're perceived like they're adults. Whole study that was done at Georgetown Law Center. We don't see them as in need of protection. So for me, the answer is the book, providing awareness, trying to gain awareness by writing about it. And the other is to begin to do some advocacy work where girls, what we would say is clap back with creating content. If you can't control, YouTube is the #1 music discovery channel on the internet, and the #1 destination for kids under 12. Even aside from YouTube Kids platform.
Yeah.
Why? Because they don't have to read or write. You got to be able to read Facebook.
Yeah.
Kids can just be online, and there's just tons of wonderful content on YouTube. It's just that everything's all mixed and commingled together on a general audience platform where you can see porn. You can find porn easily on YouTube. You can watch television shows. You can watch cartoons. And you can see all of your favorite artists and hear all of your favorite songs and put it on repeat. And so the problem is going to have to come from policy, I would assert. Mm-hmm. I want to argue in my book that this is a public health issue. Mm-hmm. And to kind of bring it back to the moment with COVID and Black Lives Matter, we have had a serious public health problem in the United States. We don't manage our public health.
Right.
We don't mitigate our public health. We don't make sure that people are taken care of around their health and well-being, whether it's issues of obesity or drug abuse, or, we don't even educate people about sex well in the United States. And so we have a serious problem, and it's costing us. I think it's also costing us in the public sphere of people being able to think critically about elections and the trolling of our electorate by Russian operatives on Twitter, and
Right.
that everything looks like it's just fun and games.
Right.
And that we really have to take a hard and deep, slow look at what are the factors coming together, intersecting, that may need to be untangled. Like we really need, the quarantine was a great opportunity for many of us to slow down.
Yes.
Right? We were just all on Zoom. There was sometimes no time to do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I assert that should we all really come out of this without, there's a lot of healing that we're going to have to do, not being able to mourn. I had an uncle who just passed away from complications of COVID last week.
I'm sorry.
And thank you. And, all of these things seem interconnected to me.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing online, how we do this kind of atavistic, you do this, you do that, you're on your own, and you're not really able to manage what other people are doing, much less managing your own behavior on Facebook or Twitter.
Right.
So hopefully, like writing about, although the book will be about girls, it really has implications for anyone. Like, girls are one of the canaries in the coal mine. They're a way for us to think about how our networked publics are shaping us and the world, to see Black girls or see ourselves, and what we need to do to mitigate the kind of degradation or dehumanization that may come when people see you in ways that you can't imagine. And so that's really important. And I think it all comes for me from that I was very shy, and I didn't have a say all the time in my experiences, whether that be like my sense of myself as an adolescent or as an emerging adult, or even now as somebody who's, in their 50s, that there are times and spaces where I, as a woman, as a Black woman, as a professor even, feel like I don't have a voice. And that I'm trying to teach myself how to, I've been practicing discourse markers, so that I can open up the can of worms that I've usually avoided in conversation. So I'm not proud of this, or this might really annoy you, but just little things to help me. I know you don't like talking about that your daughter may be in trouble. She's only 4, but I really want to get your attention around this because the consequences have already begun. Mm-hmm. You just can't see them.
Wonderful. Well, I wish you the best with continuing research and writing during your sabbatical.
Thank you.
So exciting that editors picked
I know.
the New York Times. And this has been, thank you for joining the conversation. You can you can go online to your Dr. Kyra Gaunt Twitter. She's on
LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook.
And
you can't find me on Facebook.
I've gotten off of Facebook, but the book is titled "The Games Black Girls Play: Learning the Ropes from Doubledutch to Hip Hop." And this has been a pleasure. We've covered a lot of ground. I really appreciate it, Kyra. And
I must thank you. Like, I'm a big fan of the Writers Institute.
I know, we love seeing you come to a lot of our events. We've had you on stage.
I'm a big fan. I was just talking about the Writers Institute, I think, yesterday. About I went to see Damon Young last year, but there was somebody I went to, and I was like, oh, I saw this at the Writers Institute.
Thanks.
So
whenever you're back on campus, we've got to try to do something with Doubledutch. We got to bring it back.
Yeah,
You know?
I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
Excellent.
Even though
And
I'm on
I would even
sabbatical,
try to get in the ropes again. I don't know. I, I
I can get
failed
you in.
miserably, but I would try again. All right.
All right.
Thank you very much, Kyra.
Thank you, Paul.
So long.
Bye-bye.